I'm not even a fan of the fourth wing like that. I like it, but I don't love it. And I'm just like, oh my God, get Xaden's name out of the same sentence as Cassian. They are not built the same. Xaden is actually a cleaner comparison to Rhysand than Cassian. Xaden, I'm pretty sure, was made in a lab with descriptions of Rhysand fed into Rebecca Yaros's mind, and then Xaden just fell out on the page. I don't think that Xaden and Cassian have any kind of overlap character-wise at all. That's actually a compliment towards Rhysand, which makes me feel gross. Xaden and Rhysand are both about their women in a way that Cassian never is. A Court of Frost and Starlight basically establishes that Cassian can't even be nice to her in public. And the Ember bonus chapter is just, he'll just leave her out in the cold, even when she's correct. Even when House of Flame and Shadow, the book, frames her as correct, Cassian won't go with it because Rhysand doesn't go with it. Xaden would never, ever, ever leave Violet out in the cold like that. The Call Her Daddy interview does speak on the Nesta and Cassian relationship, and I feel like people who are very pro Cassian, which is most people, let's be real, they're kind of kvetching about this because it's like, oh, Sarah was very clear, like Cassian and Nesta love each other. That horrible hike was reminiscent of something that Sarah had actually been through, and I'm not here to shit on anything that Sarah personally has been through. I have not been through the things that she has. If anything, it's the opposite. If Akasif was born out of SJM's trauma as part of like the childbirth process, labor and delivery and all of that, I'm literally an infertility girly. That's a long story, but I have truly not been through what she has been through. That being said, though, I think the difference between what Sarah went through on her hike with her husband and what Nesta went through on that hike with Cassian are completely different, or at least I hope they are. And it's because the context of those hikes matters. Based on what I remember from the Call Her Daddy interview, Sarah said something like she had gone on a hike with her husband and was really confronted with like all of like the shitty things that she felt about herself, and she broke down and had this whole thing and this come to Jesus moment, and it was a moment in her life, like a turning point. So she wrote that into Nesta's story, but it rings a little differently here. For one, Nesta didn't want to be on that hike. Nesta was being actively punished. I do not think that Sarah was being punished on her hike. And if she was, I gotta be like, girl, are you okay? There's an element of Nesta does not want to be on this hike. She does not want to be alone with Cassian for as long as she's going to be alone with Cassian at this point. And even then, Nesta aside, Cassian never looked back at her. They were hiking for what, a week before he looked back at her and realized she wasn't drinking water. Oh my God, Sarah J. Maas's husband would never or should never. And I would also argue that when you're in a situation as fraught as L&D, your husband is in it with you. Like I've never been in labor. I've never been pregnant, but my husband and I are going through the infertility process. That is happening to us both. Everything that happened with Sarah and her L&D, it doesn't happen to your husband the same way, but it does happen to both of you. That hike and the experiences that Nesta had been through were not happening to Nesta and Cassian. Cassian was happening to Nesta. I'm also going to go out on a limb here and say that Sarah's husband has said out loud, I love you to Sarah before. I would be devastated if he didn't. How many of the SJM men are based on him? And the only one who doesn't say I love you on page is Cassian? I'm going to assume that this is a very loving man to have inspired all of these men who lay the pipe on their female protagonists so well. If nothing else, on like a really positive note, I did feel like I walked away from the Call Her Daddy interview feeling like SJM was in a really good marriage, so that's saying something. The same cannot be said for Nesta. I feel like Nesta shows that she loves Cassian, and Nesta has said on page that she loves Cassian. Xaden has said on page that he loves Violet. Xaden, if nothing else, is very much about Violet, and he became, what did he become? He became like a red-eyed dude or something. The fourth wing is just, if you're not like immediately reading it, all of those details just immediately leave your head. Either way, Xaden is willing to go all in with Violet against all odds, against everything. If we are very lucky, we will see this happen and Azriel going all in on Elaine as well. But Cassian doesn't do that. And he's framed in the narrative and in the fandom like he is. So I feel like it sucks. It sucks. I don't want to say it feels like the anti Cassian girlies are being gaslit, because we're not. And like I don't think a fandom can gaslight people. I know there's a better word for what I'm reaching for. I think the word is like propagandizing. I think the fandom propagandizes good husband Cassian, good husband canon Cassian, fanon Cassian is wonderful. The idea of Cassian in the fandom is a really good guy. And I think that gets like conflated. Like, we want Cassian to be the great husband that we think he can be. But just on page, it just isn't there. And I think the reason why it isn't there is because a lot of these scenes with Nesta and Cassian in ACOTAR, especially the hike scene, are framed within Sarah's own marriage, but Nesta's not in Sarah's marriage. Nesta is in this push and pull thing with Cassian. The context is different, therefore their hike feels hollow, and Cassian not saying I love you feels telling